Lynn Faces sees a woman form a punk band after coming out of a toxic relationship.
Mm.
Where did the idea come from and why particularly a punk band?
It's been years in the making. So I think the seeds were planted like, oh God, over 10 years ago. I have a friend called Becky, and I pulled a face at her once, and she said, "Oh, that's a Lynn face." And so then we would like greet each other with the sort of gurn that Lynn does, like a Lynn face. So that was kind of a thing. I love Alan Partridge. And then I came out of a very unpleasant relationship and got very drunk in the pub with my friends. And I was like, I need to find some confidence. I want to be in a band. I've always wanted to be a drummer. So I'm going to start this punk band inspired by Lynn from Alan Partridge. It was an idea that my friend Becky and I came up with. So I kind of booked a gig in the bottom of a basement bar in Plymouth and then sobered up and realized that absolutely none of us could play anything. And so I cancelled it. But I'm a writer, and I was like, oh, it just stuck in my head. And then I met Vivian Albertine from the Slits quite a few years ago, and we were having a conversation. And I think she kind of identified that I was in an abusive situation before I did. And she said, you should read my book. And so it kind of felt like the worlds of punk and Lynn were colliding. And then I saw a wonderful play called Outlier, which is sort of a kind of a beautiful play with music that Malika Kagode wrote and performed in. And I just thought, oh, I think this is a gig, although albeit these people can't play their instruments, unlike Outlier, which is like beautifully presented. And then it just stuck in my head, and I had conversations with different theatres, and I sort of got it off the ground very quickly in the end. But yeah, it was lots of components coming together, really.
So writing is obviously a solitary endeavour, but you also perform in Lynn Faces. What is it like bringing your story to life on stage?
It's the first time I've ever performed in a play, and I'm the drummer, which is lovely. And I'm not in the whole piece, which is also kind of lovely and awful because I have to sit backstage and wait to come on, which is so nerve-wracking. But it felt really important to be in this piece of work for me, because of the subject matter, and I play a character that is very knowledgeable about abuse, and the only character on stage really that has a fully formed experience and view and is coming from a place of healing. And so that felt cathartic to me to be playing that role. And my character's called Joy. I have a more joy top. So yeah, it's been lovely because I'm so used to being on the other side and watching the play. And actually, I find the performing very mindful, especially in Edinburgh. It was the nicest part of the day because the rest of it is stressful and you're running around flying and it feels very manic. Whereas like on stage, you have to go into a place of kind of peace and to perform, and I really have enjoyed that, and getting to see the audience reactions is just love. It's just wonderful.
You mentioned Edinburgh.
Mm.
Lynn Faces premiered at Edinburgh.
Mm.
Is it different this time around?
It's way different. Yeah, I think the thing with Edinburgh is it should be a place where you take work to experiment and figure things out, but it's so expensive, and you're up against very slick work with a lot of money behind it. And so I really felt the stress in Edinburgh because I'd taken this very messy, weird play. And it didn't feel like there was room for it. It didn't feel like there was room to be messy in that way. But since we came back, I was like, well, I managed to get Arts Council funding to tour the play. And I just thought it really needs a rewrite. So I sat down with Jess, the director, and some of the actors and talked about what we thought was working and what wasn't. And then I went away and did a few rewrites. So it's differently sort of structured now. The heart is still the same. But we've got a couple of new songs, and we also had to recast one of the roles, and the actor is much younger, and so it was quite a nice challenge rewriting the character as a younger person, and the dynamics between the friends. I think before the gig was really about Leah, the protagonist, and I wanted to kind of pull the other characters in a bit more. So yeah, it's quite different. I'm excited for people that have seen it in Edinburgh to watch it again, just to see how they can see how it's changed and evolved.
Now, obviously, your main part in the theatre process is as a writer. What is your favourite part of the writing process, and what is your least favourite part?
It's kind of hard to say because every project has been so different. Every play I've written has been under very different circumstances. I love when you get the seed of an idea and it excites you, and you're sitting down and you're writing notes. And I do enjoy the process of actually getting it out. I think rewrites can be hard when you feel like you've kind of cracked a play and then you get feedback from a dramaturg or something and you're like, oh gosh, there's like so much to change. But actually it's never it's always, you find joy in the rewrites as well. So I kind of, I feel like every project there's been a different point that's been stressful. But I do find a lot of joy in the process of writing. It's afterwards, I think sometimes, but especially with theatre, because you have to often get things off the ground yourself. As a writer, you come up with the idea, you write it, and then there's no money, so you're sort of scrambling around trying to find people to come on board, trying to find funding. I find that bit quite difficult. It's never like you get paid to write it and you give it over and then other people take that off your hands. It's kind of having to be involved in every aspect of it if you want it to happen, because I realized quite early on that if you're kind of waiting for the gatekeeping, you will be waiting a long time. So I just sort of try to get things off the ground myself. And I do find that quite stressful sometimes. Or like, I think especially with theatre, you might get a bit of funding and you only have a certain amount of time in which to write the thing. And so you often don't, you can't see a project through in the way that you would like, or have the time to sort of work on the writing. And I find that bit quite difficult with theatre.
Now, you mentioned before about being on stage
Mm.
for the first time. I'm going to put you in the audience now. What sort of theatre do you most like to watch?
I love comedy and I love drama. So a good comedy drama would be the one for me. I like plays with music. I'm kind of open really. I love Edinburgh in the sense that you can see so many different types of work and often be really surprised by something that wasn't really your thing. So I think anything that's got heart, I'm kind of open to. Um, I like lots of different forms of theatre, and I feel like it's nice to see as much work as possible because it informs the way that you want to move your career.